The unspoken rules of bodybuilding coaching, what every athlete and every coach should expect. That's what we're diving in today. It's kind of a behind the scenes with myself and the head coach on our team for competition prep, Miss Eash to Beast, talking about what athletes should expect as well as coaches. So it goes both ways. We have a lot of experience with women, and we really want to shed some light for you before you dive into your journey so you can be well prepared to get started on the right foot. So welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I'm Alicia, aka Eash the Beast, Coach Eash.
The point of this podcast is if you are wanting to prep, it really depends on the success of the relationship you have with your coach. Super important. So we found some things that were common themes amongst all of us coaches that we find, and we wanted to share them with you today in this episode. So we have a few key things for you to look forward to. We're going to talk about mismatched expectations, unrealistic expectations, also setting boundaries, what coaches expect from their athletes, as well as what athletes should expect from their coaches. So let's go ahead and jump on in. First thing we want to talk about is mismatched expectations. So what does this look like in reality? What have you seen?
A lot of times it may be the timeline of a prep or how much hand holding someone wants or feels like they need or expects from a coach. That's a really big one. And also how much a client is communicating kind of goes hand in hand with the hand holding.
I think a lot of athletes will expect the coach is going to do all the work for them. Right? We give them the roadmap, but if essentially they actually have to drive to the destination with the roadmap in hand.
Right. Like we give you the blueprint. Now you have to build the house. Okay. You have to do with that information. You need to go build the house with the materials and things set forward.
Right. And I think as coaches, we expect full buy-in from our clients.
Absolutely. If you're investing in this process with your money, we also hope you're investing with your time and your level of dedication to us, because for us, we put a lot into our coaching clients. We have a lot of information, a lot of resources. You get videos from us detailing exactly what to do next. We're hoping you're not just fucking that off.
Right. And so with this episode, we really want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and you know what a successful coaching relationship should look like. So if you are doing things or you're doing things on your own or with a coach and you feel like something's off, hopefully this episode will shine a little light as to what your expectations should be as an athlete. The other thing I think is super important is miscommunication. That's a huge one. It's oftentimes lack of clarity on the client side on how check-ins should roll. How are we communicating? How are we making adjustments? Are adjustments supposed to be made every week, right? I think some people think like, and I think coaches can get in this trap too. And I think as an early coach, I felt like I always had to be changing something in order for me to be providing value for my services. And that's really not the case. I mean, think about how many times you've had preps or whatever, and things are going great. So if it's going great, we don't need to change anything.
Yeah, I was in an improvement season for nearly 3 years. Every 2 weeks when I was checking in with my coach, things were not really changing. There were months where things would not really be changing. And I didn't think any less of my coach for not changing my protocol, right? I would just hope that any questions I had in the process were being answered and my coach is in my back pocket doing what best interests for me.
Agreed. And the other thing I think that's important is as an athlete, when you're communicating to your coach, is you really need to share whatever could possibly be affecting your prep, because we can't read minds, right? We're not mind readers. We can't read between the lines. So being very clear is super important. And then as a coach, giving feedback, even if you're not changing things.
Yes, feedback, clarity on maybe why we aren't changing anything, or where you are in the process of the current timeline.
Right. It's definitely a give and take, and something that coaches can oftentimes, at least in my experience, I've worked with multiple coaches over the years. It's really just, they give you like really generic feedback. And I see this a lot of times with like big coaches who have like hundreds of athletes, and they're just really trying to crank through as many as possible. And I understand why some of them are just like, no changes, looks great, keep going. I think some people are okay with that level of feedback, and other people really just need to be assured that they're on the right track, and educating them in the process is super important.
I also think it's on the coach to know who your client is. Whether you're on a phone call with them, that first initial call, or you can kind of read between the lines in their responses to questions, because some people come with the athlete mentality of, tell me what to do, I'll do it. Yes, no, no questions, and they just follow protocol. And there's the other flip side of, I'm brand new to this. I don't know what goes into this. I've never had a coach, or I'm not an athlete and I want to do this to the best of my ability. And so educating both of those clientele, but knowing which ones need a little bit more hand holding. I think as a coach, you should know.
Definitely. And definitely, if you set the stage right with a client, for lack of better words, pun intended, but when you get on a phone call with them, you pretty much have that perception, right? Am I going to need to be, is this client going to need more reassurance? Are they going to need a bit more? We have clients that are really like, they want to nerd out on the science behind things. Like I have a client right now. She's like, can you explain to me why you're making this, this switch? And she's actually, a high level coach, not a competition coach, but a fat loss coach, in the social media world. And, shame on me for just assuming she understood. I'm like, oh, she'll get while I'm, and I give her really in-depth answers. But it's important for you to educate people, because when you tell them why, they're more bought into the process. They're like, okay, that I get it. I could see why that makes sense. And that's why I need to be doing things, or I need to not be doing things.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I think is important to consider if you find that you're either stuck or what you're doing isn't working is, a lot of times unrealistic expectations come into play. I think when you start a coaching program, it can be really easy to assume that things are going to just move at a rapid pace, right? Like it's just always going to be trending downwards if fat loss is the goal. It really is something that we have to teach them early on. So as coaches, we have to really set the stage again with that expectation. It's like, it's not going to be changing every time. Like, how many times have you been in a prep and the scale doesn't move for weeks? It like ping pongs between 3 pounds. And because we don't really we're like, okay, I'm in that spot, but we know that like we're doing the things, we're checking the boxes and things are going to move. But your body is a very intricate machine, and it doesn't always just respond because you're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing.
Yes. That's where a lot of patience comes in, for sure. And that doesn't necessarily mean your coach needs to be changing things either. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And you really have to trust in your coach to know that they've got your best interest and your best results at hand.
Right. Which brings us to the next piece of this puzzle. What should a client expect from a great coach? A coach is there to give you a roadmap and guide you, but what does that look like in practicality?
I think one that not a lot of people talk about is, how would you like to be coached? How is your coach talking to you? Are they belittling you? Are they calling you fat? How would you like to be coached? And speaking from experience, you can see it on my YouTube channel. My coach called me fat when I was maybe 8 to 10 weeks out. Now, I have thick skin, and I laughed it off and I said, Coach, I have abs. Your girl is not fat. Okay. But I know not every woman can handle that. That is it's just crazy to me. But it's a very fragile thing to be coaching a woman, and this is directly on what you look like, quite frankly. And so are you okay with your coach kind of talking shit to you, calling you fat? Or do you need a little bit more motivating coach who is not going to call you fat and is going to encourage you along the way? There are just so many different aspects of client coach relationships and how to go about that, but it's really figuring out who the right coach for you is and what their communication style regarding that.
I agree. I definitely have had a lot of male coaches, and this is not to throw any kind of shade on male coaches, but I have found that in my experience working with male coaches, I think I've had probably 4 male coaches in my lifetime, that I find they're a little interested in being understanding.
They're more
Empathetic.
result driven for sure.
Right? They're like, you hired me to get you to this level. Cut your feelings out of it. Like,
cut your hormones. We don't give a shit.
and I mean, as someone who considers herself a boss bitch who is like just in that mindset, it still is important to be spoken to as a human, right? Like,
yes.
Hey, all right, this past week wasn't a great one. And I like to talk to my clients like we're a team. Like I'm your coach, but we're a team in this together. It's me and you. We're walking along this little journey, and then I'm getting you on stage and like smacking you on the ass and let's go. And there is a bit of tough love that sometimes has to come into play, but it's done with gentle, loving pressure because life is lifey. If you've never done this before, it can be a lot. And we aren't here to coddle or, baby you, but we do want to make sure that your head is on straight, you're going the right direction, your heart is in it, and you're not making decisions based off of emotions and things like that. So I think it's really important to make sure the coaching style is in alignment with your personality.
Absolutely. And as a coach, it's important to have some empathy for your client 100% because divorces happen. Life happens, kids get sick, life just gets lifey sometimes. And sometimes you have to give a little tough love, but other times you have to come from a super understanding point of like, okay, this is happening in life and we're just going to move forward the best we can. We can make progress here the best we can.
Yes. Next up is you really want to expect a clear roadmap and a strategy from your coach. It is really important that you understand what it is that you're doing. So are you going into a fat loss phase? Are you going into a building phase? And really knowing why that's important for the end result. And I think a lot of times that gets glazed over. Coaches just hand out plans and they assume their clients know what's going on. But it is important that your coach communicates that to you.
Yeah, I like to get on a call with my athletes. Like I just had calls last month in January to build out their 2025 roadmap. We built out the entire year of what it looks like. So therefore they're comfortable and they know what to expect in each season because bodybuilding is just not prep for 16 weeks and it's over. There is a maintenance phase, there's a build phase, there's maybe mini cuts, then the prep starts, and then we have to reverse out of the prep. There is a whole roadmap that should be filled out so you feel comfortable in your process and you know exactly where you are.
Because clarity is the key here. When you have clarity and you know why you're doing what you're doing, it makes sense. It's when you have to get up and go do fasted cardio. You're like, why do I have to do this? This is stupid. What role does this play? You have to understand that these pieces are all, in fact, a part of a very intricate and moving puzzle. Now, the other thing that's super important is understanding feedback and the biofeedback, and that you should expect your coach isn't just giving you a cookie cutter plan that they're giving to all of their athletes, right? And part of that is when you check in, we look at all that data and make some tweaks. So that's super important as well.
Yeah. And as a coach, don't get offended if I don't remember what's on your meal plan, what's on your training program, if we are outside of check-ins, if we are on Instagram in the DMs, if you are asking me a question somewhere else. If I don't have it in front of me, I don't know. You are a precious little one of one. You are very special. You have different things in motion than other clients. So don't get offended if I don't remember.
And to that point, it really is understanding boundaries with communication, which is something that I think is super important as well, right? Is basically what we're getting at here is your coach has a life. And I have been guilty of, in earlier days, thinking everything was an emergency when I was in prep, right? Like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
this happened, or I missed this meal. Oh my God, what should I do? And like, I'm going to be doing this, and like, would this be ideal? And like overthinking everything and blowing my coach up in their emails. And then if I wasn't hearing a reply that day, and then I went on Instagram and my coach was like posting their workout or whatever, and I'm like, this fool, I emailed him and he's ignoring me. That mindset immediately has to be squashed, right? Like the coach has their boundaries, they have their working time, they have a time when they have their information up, they click into that mode. It's just like if you wouldn't expect somebody to just walk in your house and expect you to work at any given time. It's kind of the same thing, right? And I think because we are in this day and age of social media and sharing a lot of our journey, which is how people find us and how they're attracted to what we do, is because we're walking the talk. And we might be training at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, which is typical like working hours for most people, that work 9 to 5s. But for us, it's very different. Like we could be up at 5 a.m. doing check-ins and replies and done with our day by noon. And then we aren't getting back into our desk until the next morning at 5 a.m. So you just have to understand, what is your communication style with your coach? Where is that happening? The other thing we were talking about is making sure that you communicate in the area where your coach is already communicating with you. So if they have a software or a platform they're using for check-ins and communication, try to stick to all of that communication being there unless you're instructed otherwise. I can't tell you how many times I have been guilty of emailing my coach or DMing or sending a text through WhatsApp, and they're like, put it through the portal. And then that also set the standard for me when I started coaching.
Yeah. And that's really what I mean by don't get offended if I don't remember. Like you asking if you can sub something out on your meal plan because you see me eating it on my story. I don't know, honey. I don't have your meal plan in front of me. But that was beautifully said.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it comes with the wisdom of experience, I feel like, right?
Absolutely.
The next thing is expect that you should be receiving some honest, data-driven feedback from your coach. Super key. You want to have some honest, data-driven feedback. You can't just go on a feeling. And the other thing is your coach shouldn't be just telling you what you want to hear. And this is difficult. And I think this is what sets apart a great coach from an okay coach, is coaches that want to placate to what their clients might want to hear, because you're not always going to hear what you want to hear. It's just important that it's done in a very respectful manner.
Absolutely. And that's why you hire a coach, to take you places where you couldn't achieve by yourself. And that comes with feedback maybe you don't want to hear. But as long as it's respectful and solution focused, then they're doing their job. They're doing what you hired them to do.
Absolutely. Ding, ding. The other thing is you want to find a coach that's going to hold you accountable, but not in the way that they're babysitting, right? I think a lot of times we've had in the past where when people have never worked with a coach before, they think that this is a daily communication need.
Yes.
Like, I need to talk to my coach every day. This isn't the NFL.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, even as an IFBB pro and working with a coach after I got my pro card, I knew that it was not necessary for me to be communicating with my coach every day. Oh my God, I only pooped twice today. What should I do? Right? Like things like that. It's just really not necessary.
No. And I feel like that might shock some people, that you don't or shouldn't communicate with your coach day in and day out.
really, if it isn't broke, we don't need to fix it. So if things are working and they're moving in the right direction, there's no need for daily check-ins. The only time daily check-ins or daily communication ever comes into play is when you're in peak week. And if you've never heard of that, basically it's the week right before your show when things are really strategic and we're really paying attention to some different things that week. And your coach should be communicating that to you. But other than that, you really don't need daily communication. And I will say there are some outliers where like we've had some clients in weird situations where we're like, all right, if they're not able to, like my client just recently, she couldn't use the restroom and we're like trying to figure out like what's going on. Is it fiber? Is it lack of water? And so I'm troubleshooting. And so we're communicating like 4 days in a row, but that's not normal, right? It's like, if there's an issue, we try to find a solution.
I will say I do love the messages of my girls telling me, oh, I hit a new low today. And sometimes I'll have a few of those come in one day. And I'm like, good job, girls. High five.
It's very rewarding as a coach.
Totally.
The other thing when it comes to accountability is we have to realize as the client that it really is on us. It is up to us to execute the plan and be accountable to what it is on our plan and the directions that we've received to get to that stage. You have to remember when you hire a coach, you're trusting them. And if you don't trust them, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment and probably a very uneasy prep. So you have to find somebody that you trust to get you there. And if you don't, then you're going to be questioning everything that they give you. Let's move into the other thing that you should expect as a client is you should expect individualized adjustments to your plan. So it's not a generic just, okay, let's add 30 minutes or we're going to keep doing, the same kind of nonsense if it's not working. You want to expect that you are going to have some individualized adjustments to your plan. It's not cookie cutter. Now, this isn't to say that if you have a friend prepping that you guys aren't going to have similar things. This is also something I wanted to discuss because there is in bodybuilding, there's going to be a standard of exercises or a standard of foods that you're going to see as a theme, right? Like you're not going to go into a bodybuilding prep and be eating fast food and junk and things like that. You're going to be eating probably the same types of foods as somebody else who is also prepping. The things that are going to be different is likely going to be the portion sizes, the amounts, and things like that.
Absolutely. Even training frequency, your supplements. There's only so much variety in bodybuilding, but it should be individualized regardless.
And all those things will change based on your progress. So if you, like we said earlier, if you're plugging along and things are looking great, you can't expect your coach to change anything because it's working. I think some people get into this trap of thinking, well, shouldn't we cut my calories more? And if you've lost your interest come down, you're looking leaner, you've lost scale weight, things are looking good, we don't want to cut more food. Why? It's working. And people get into this like rushed mentality of I still have this many pounds to lose. We should just keep cutting more. And that is going to end you in a disaster metabolically. And if you have a good coach who understands energy balance, they're not just slashing things just to slash things because you think you should be eating less food. Trust me, you don't want to be eating less food.
Right. Like my client, Vanessa, she dropped 50 pounds we did that in about 7 months. We changed macros maybe 4 times in 7 months. Her body was just so responsive and dropping the whole time. Never did she question, why aren't we dropping things more? And just, I rest assured her it's working. If it ain't broke, we don't fix it. We don't try to cut lower. The body's responding, and that's exactly what we want.
I love that. It's a clear just sample of how just trust the process really is something that we need to do if we are hiring a coach. So the key takeaway is your coach is going to give you the map, but it really is up to you to follow the plan and execute and trust the process. Let's move into what coaches expect from their athletes. And we've already touched on a few of these, but some other things we want you to think about. Here's what we need from you as a coach. We need consistency. We need consistency in your execution. We need you to be doing the things that we laid out for you more than you're not. Now, we know that it's probably not going to be perfect. We don't expect perfection. It's really just the consistency game that we're looking for so we can inch you closer to that goal and not be off track too far for the target date at hand. So, I mean, I feel like following to about 90% of accuracy is, of course, we would love to say 100%, but the reality of it is that it's likely not going to happen. And we really just want to set the stage for that, because a lot of times I feel like people quit before it gets good.
Yeah, they do. And there's something to be said at what point at which you quit. Does the scale stall and you're quick to give up? Maybe it's that next 2 days of consistency that's going to push you down 2 pounds where you were, but you won't know if you give up.
Yes. And I think the other piece of that is if you're not following it consistently, then it's really hard for us to know like what's working, what's not working. If it's very erratic, if we have set some parameters we want you to follow, but you're only doing it like half the time, then it makes it really challenging for a coach to be able to really adjust things appropriately for the remainder of your prep.
And you have to be so honest with your coach. You're not going to get in trouble. At the end of the day, what you don't do will only reflect back on you. Like that's the results that you're getting because you're not doing what you're told, or you're not doing everything to the fullest capability. That's up to you and your discipline and what you feel like you have the capacity for.
The other thing that we want to make sure is set up properly is in terms of communication and expectations is that when you check in, you're being honest.
100%. You have to be honest.
You're being very honest. And I think that women sometimes get scared because it's like you have to be vulnerable a little bit there, right? Like, did you eat your feelings one day? Did you start your period and like ate the pantry? Did you skip training because you had a breakup with a boyfriend and like you couldn't get out of bed? Like this is real shit that happens. And if you don't communicate that to your coach, we're lost. We're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to fix this.
Yeah, I know personally, I have some resistance doing my check-in. And I know a lot of people feel that way. But when I fill in my check-in, it's a reflection of how did I do the past week or 2 weeks? And you have to be so for real with yourself and then with your coach. And that's why the trust factor is so big. Because did you really do everything to the best of your capability? You have to check in with yourself. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah, which leads to really the next point is you have to trust the process, and knowing that if you are honest with your coach and they come back with, okay, well, this is what we're doing, you have to trust that they are going to guide you in that right direction.
Yeah. And if you sugarcoat on your check-in or you aren't truthful, then the direction gets messed up because the coach now thinks one thing, you're really doing another thing because you don't want to hurt your coach's feelings or you don't want their feedback on it, but you're not helping anyone being dishonest. You either did or you didn't, and you have to take the emotion out of it and just go forth with what happened.
Yeah, I feel too that a lot of times it's really just the fact that people expect that, like we were talking about earlier, that the progress is going to be linear. And it's not. It's oftentimes the opposite. It isn't linear. You know, your body's not a machine. And so trusting the process is huge on those weeks where shit's not changing.
Yes.
You can't be like, nothing changed for 2 weeks, I'm going to fire my coach. Wait, whoa, pump the fucking brakes, right? Like that's just the reality of it. I mean, I went in a prep almost 6 weeks without the scale changing.
Scary.
No lie. And I'm like, Jesus, take the wheel. Like I'm here, I'm doing all the things. And I had to be honest with myself too. There were definitely things that I was doing that were affecting that too. So it's really being honest with yourself too. Like, am I really on track with my diet? Am I really on track with my training? So super important. I think if you're constantly questioning things with your coach, it can start to build a real unhealthy relationship.
Totally. It depends on where those questions are coming from. Is it your curiosity and you want to understand the process and educate yourself, or are you questioning because you don't trust their methods and you're just kind of looking for a way out almost?
Well, the other thing I feel too is Social media is a blessing and a curse, but I think one thing that you have to think about when you are working with your coach is you can't get shiny object syndrome. So if your coach is giving you instructions, you're XYZ amount of weeks out, and then you go pop on Instagram and you see somebody you're following or a friend who's in prep or whatever, and they're XYZ out, and you're like, well, you hit your coach up and you're like, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this and this, but why am I doing this? Like, hopefully your coach has explained to you by then and you don't have those questions, but I've seen that time and time again, for sure.
For sure. I have also seen that time and time again. Social media has been very interesting for the bodybuilding community.
Yes.
A blessing, but also a curse, because you think everyone looks how they look like on Instagram, and that's definitely not the case, but that's another topic for another story, another day.
It is. The other thing that coaches definitely need when it comes to expectations with their clients is open and honest communication, which I know we've really sort of drilled into this episode already. But if you are struggling, your coach needs to know. If you are struggling, like, don't ghost your coach, don't skip check-ins, at least communicate with them so they know what's going on.
Yeah, and hopefully they don't react in a negative way, and they are very respectful, and they offer that extra just comfort that you are looking for and need at that time.
It's a partnership, not a dictatorship.
Yes.
It's a partnership, not a dictatorship. It's a team effort, and it can get real lonely in bodybuilding because it isn't like other team sports. And I think that's the other thing that we should also touch on too is, like we mentioned earlier, like, you can't expect your coach to be communicating with you every day. That's unrealistic in bodybuilding. And it can be very lonely, and it can feel like, well, this isn't what I had in mind. But if you come from team sports, it can be a little bit shocking because you're just on your own.
Yeah. And what's funny is that's what drew me to bodybuilding, the fact that it was all on me. It's just me and my coach and the plan we set forth. But I totally understand the other side of it, of I'm the only one going through this. And it really is a 24-hour sport that you signed up for. And to be going through it alone is something.
It can be lonely, and especially if you are struggling or prep isn't going as expected or it's difficult, it becomes a lot easier to try to quit or to want to quit. Mm-hmm. So I think, which leads into my next point, is that really when we look at our athletes, we really expect that you have a level of emotional resilience, quite frankly, right? Like, prep is hard. Your mindset is going to be your biggest asset in the whole process. And if your mind isn't right, you are definitely going to find that this is a very challenging process.
It is a lot to do with mindset and the discipline day in and day out, for sure.
So to sum that up, a coach is only going to be able to make adjustments if you're giving honest data and being very clear. So if you're not being honest, you're really just not giving yourself a fair shot at success in this entire process.
Agreed.
Okay, let's move on to how do you know if you're ready for coaching? So before you sign up for coaching, you really need to ask yourself, am I ready to commit to this? Because it definitely is a commitment, it's an endeavor, and it's one you should definitely be serious about. The first thing is, are you willing to track and follow a plan?
Yeah, what phase of life are you in? Are you mentally capable of being able to follow a structured plan? Does structure give you anxiety? Yeah.
How's your lifestyle now, right? Is it so far from what a lifestyle in prep would look like, right? Like, do you have an erratic work schedule? Do you have a toddler? Are you in a season of dealing with sick elderly parents, right? So you have to ask yourself, am I able to track and follow a structured plan?
Also, are you mentally prepared for the discipline that's required in bodybuilding? Because there is a lot of it. It's a lot of saying no to food, obviously, but social events. A lot of social events are revolved around alcohol and food and people asking questions. And you have to say no to the food and the drinks, right? Maybe you eat right before your event, or you bring your food in, and then people are asking, why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you eating? It is a lot of discipline mentally to be able to go through that and just adhere to your protocol.
It's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Huge.
And if you are not able to be mentally disciplined as best as you can, or the hardest you've ever been in your life, then it probably isn't the sport for you, which leads me into having a little bit of a thick skin. I mean, we always give feedback in a very constructive manner, but are you open to feedback even when it's difficult? I mean, I don't know how many times I've had to have conversations with women about the fact that they're not going to be ready to compete as we're going through the journey, right? And I usually make that call at about 8 weeks out. I know at 8 weeks, like, are we going to be able to pull this off in a healthy manner, or do we need to reconsider? And you have to understand that they're making those calls in your best interest. I don't know if you've had that experience with clients too, but it's a tough one.
Absolutely. Like when they're not ready to be in a prep this year, or someone comes to me and says, I want to prep in the next year, but they have 50 pounds to lose before even hitting the stage. And we don't even know how much muscle mass they have. So absolutely, you have to be open and receptive to the feedback and know that your coach is trying to give you the best result possible.
And that should be the end goal, definitely. And then lastly, are you investing in a coach to learn and not just be told what to do? I think this is really important, because just expecting, well, they're just going to tell me what to do and I'm just going to check the boxes and execute, I think that'll get you to a destination. But once you're done, if you haven't learned why you're doing the things you're doing and you come out of a prep, you are going to be in a world of hurt, not understanding the entire process.
Yeah, that's actually something I haven't thought about, quite transparently.
The learning piece of things.
Yeah.
Say more.
Like having a client hire a coach with the intent on learning the process. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You have to understand why you're doing the things you are, and hopefully taking away the healthy habits and such that come from coaching and take them into the rest of your life, because you're probably not going to be coached for the rest of your life, but you want to have long lasting habits and structure that will benefit you and lead you into a healthy fitness journey after competing.
Beautifully said. And hopefully you got the takeaway from this, where we're really just trying to get you to see that it's not about just getting to the stage. It's not about just that day. It really is about trusting the process, becoming the kind of athlete who is doing the work, not making excuses, trust the process, and is really learning along the way, so you feel empowered as you get to stage, honestly. Any last words? I think we really summed it up. We really wanted to share where coaching mentality and athlete mentality should be going into this relationship, because, you know, you put a ring on it when you hire a coach.
Absolutely. I think only one thing I wanted to add is bodybuilding is a lonely sport. For sure, you have your coach and they're going to be your right-hand man, but that's where the beauty of social media has come in, where you can find people who are prepping. You can find other bodybuilders. Maybe they don't live near you, but having that support system, communicating with them and building those online friendships, honestly, is a beautiful thing. And I know a lot of people who best understand me and were going through prep and in this journey were not the people around me. It was my online besties. It was my online friends. It was my YouTube community that helped push me through, that helped support me, even when I didn't know I needed the support. So if you are looking for support, find other people online, on social media, reach out to me, reach out to us, and just
do the damn thing.
Just do the damn thing.
Well, I love that. We'll end on that note. And if this has piqued your curiosity in any way, shape, or form, maybe you're interested in taking your bodybuilding prep to the next level, or you're interested in getting started, of course, you know where to find us. This is what we do. This is what we love. You know, we prioritize your success. It's very important to us, because your success is a reflection of our coaching. And that's really how we go into the process, right? It's not just let me throw anybody on stage and risk everything for them to get there. We really want to make sure that it is a happy unity of sorts. So if you want clear guidance, expert feedback, you want a plan built for you, obviously you can hit us up. Check the link in the show notes or over in the description box on YouTube. That will lead you to our physique assessment. And that is step one in working with us for competition prep coaching. That will give us a solid foundation of where you're at, how to assess where you need to go, educate you in that physique assessment so you know why we would recommend what we would recommend for your unique situation. And then that will give you the information you need as to whether or not this is something you want to proceed forward with, and also the timeline roughly of how that would look. So hit up that link. Of course, find us anywhere on socials. You can find Alicia over on Instagram, Eash _da, DA _the beast, right? Did I tear that up?
Duh, and then beast.
Eash the beast. And over on YouTube as well, which we'll link up her YouTube in the description. And we would love to guide you on this journey. It is a rewarding one, but it is one that if you start off on the right foot with the right coach, could be a positive experience for years to come.
Amazing.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.